My name is Sarah Crawford, and I am running for North Carolina Senate District 18. And I'm running really because I am not happy with the track that the General Assembly is taking us in North Carolina. As a mother, I'm very concerned about education, not just for my children, but for all children in North Carolina. Very concerned about decisions around Medicaid, whether it's reform or the decision not to expand Medicaid. I work at Tammy Lynn Center for Developmental Disabilities, so I see firsthand the role that Medicaid lives in the role that Medicaid plays in the lives of people that really need it. So generally just an unhappiness with the way that the General Assembly is taking us on the wrong track in terms of education, the economy, healthcare. I feel that I am the best candidate for this position because I know how to bring people together. After several years in the nonprofit community, I don't go to work every day thinking, oh, let me put on my partisan hat and figure out how to make these decisions. I put on how are we going to get services to the people that need them most? And we come together. It doesn't mean that we check disagreement or check our brains at the door, but it means that we work together for thoughtful solutions. And I look forward to bringing that same passion and dedication to the General Assembly. Well, the role for any tax plan, the three questions we have to ask are, is it fair, is it adequate, and is it stable? And the General Assembly had an opportunity to update North Carolina's tax code in a way that could be fair and adequate and also provide stability for the programs that North Carolina needs. They did not do that. They chose instead to give tax giveaways to the wealthiest and out-of-state corporations, and therefore took millions of dollars of revenue out of our system, hurting education. And you can't build an economy without a good education system. We have to restore the funding that's been taken out of education, make sure that teachers get paid what they need, make sure classrooms have what they need, and ensure that our economy can grow. We can't continue on the path that we've been on. I support keeping film incentives for North Carolina. The film industry is a valuable industry to North Carolina, brings jobs, builds our economy, and we have to ensure that we can keep that industry here. We've already heard about some of these companies moving out of North Carolina because of the cuts in the incentive program. So I believe that we need to keep those incentives, and I would work to restore them fully. I believe that if there are energy options to explore in North Carolina, we need to take all of those things into consideration. What we cannot do is risk our air and our drinking water in order to do it. And we have to take those things very seriously. What happened this year with the fracking situation is the General Assembly voted to fast track fracking, not making sure that safeguards are put in place before permits are issued, and not disclosing the chemicals that they pump into our groundwater. And furthermore, allowing fracking to happen in your backyard even if you don't want it there. So I have a lot of concerns with the way that fracking has been handled, the way that offshore drilling has been handled. We must ensure that proper safeguards are in place to protect our air and our water before we pursue these methods. I think the General Assembly has largely disregarded what North Carolina families really need. Making sure that that middle class and low income families are the families that benefit from any kind of tax code changes, making sure that anything regarding our tax code still provides for the essential services that we need. Largely the General Assembly is making the gap between the haves and the have-nots wider and wider, and making it harder for those families at the lower end of income to make it into middle income, to achieve what they believe is possible for their families. Well, I have many legislative priorities because I think there are a lot of things that we can be doing right for North Carolina. My top priority is education. We have to have a thoughtful approach to make sure that teachers get a decent salary raise up to the national average, not a shell game which leaves our most veteran teachers out. So we have to have a 4-year plan to bring everybody up to the national average and give our veteran teachers the longevity pay that they have earned, plus the increase that they were promised, which is not what happened. My mother, who is a 22-year veteran in Wake County Public Schools, is getting the equivalent of a 0.29% raise. That is not how we treat our most veteran teachers. Further, we have to make sure that we do things that reduce class sizes, not increase. We have to restore funding for critical supplies and textbooks that our teachers need, and we have to respect teachers so that the children in the classroom can get the education that they deserve, a quality public education for every child in North Carolina. Well, I think that it's a thoughtful approach to look at potentially borrowing the money against our AAA rating that we have. We can do that, and we should look at opportunities to do that. The thing that I think surprises me the most about the transportation projects in his list, some of those projects were already scheduled and already funded prior to the change in the mobility formula a couple of years ago. When that vote was taken, it essentially took most of those projects off the list, and so now projects that were already funded, already scheduled, are being roped back into the mix with the potential of borrowing money. One such project that is particularly important in Senate District 18 is the expansion of Highway 401 from Rollsville all the way into Lewisburg. That is a project that was scheduled and partially funded, and my opponent took a vote that essentially wiped that off the map, and now they're struggling to figure out how they're going to pay for that project going forward. The death penalty is a very complex issue, and I'm not prepared to make any judgment calls at this point, and I would want to sit down and hear all the arguments. I've certainly read quite a bit on the death penalty, and certainly as a mother, when you think about your own family and going through something as tragic as what some families have had to go through, I'm not prepared to make that decision at this time. I want to explore all the options and talk with the stakeholders and figure out what is going to be best moving forward. Certainly with a couple of cases just recently in North Carolina overturned, having found that one person on death row was innocent. Those are the types of cases that really raise question and make me think that we do have to seriously consider this. Our legislature has a number of functions and a number of duties, both during session and when they're not in session. I do think that there are some areas of limitation. Certainly not having a full-time legislature limits the number of people who can get involved in public office. Reserving that for people who are wealthy or retired, which is not necessarily a reflection of what the population in North Carolina is. So I would look at opportunities to explore that, but I'm not sure how I feel about that at this time. I think we have to look at all the possibilities. I know, look at what Michigan is doing. They have a full-time legislature, and look at what some other states are doing so that we can use taxpayer dollars as effectively and efficiently as possible. I have dedicated my career to public service, most recently in the nonprofit space. But all through high school, I grew up in Eastern Wake County, which is in this district. I graduated from East Wake High School, graduated from NC State, and all through that experience, I was volunteering to be a voice for other people. And that's what I've continued to do in my career. That is the same commitment that I will bring to the General Assembly, to be a voice for people who need one, for families, for fathers, mothers, children, the elderly, and be a voice for the things in North Carolina that really matter. We can't continue the cuts on things that are essential to our growth and prosperity in North Carolina. So I will bring that commitment, that dedication to people to the General Assembly, and make sure that I bring the stakeholders to the table so that we can have thoughtful conversations. A typical Saturday morning, I've got 2 children. They're 5 and 3, and so a typical Saturday morning for us involves waking up in the craziness. We also have dogs, and so typically what we'll do on a Saturday is we'll, after breakfast, we'll get everybody ready, and we'll go on what we call an adventure, which sometimes involves the dogs, always involves the kids. And we'll go, we might do something as silly as going to the flea market, find a community event that's going on, find a way to volunteer. We do that on Saturday mornings as well, but it's chaotic. We're a typical family, trying to make sure we put food on the table and make sure that our kids get the best education that they deserve. And so I think it's very typical of what any family would be doing on a Saturday morning. Well, somebody that I recently was just with in the North Carolina political world is Governor Jim Hunt. I think he did a wonderful job during his 16 years as governor, certainly making education a priority, and he did it at times with a bipartisan legislature. And I look up to his leadership. I look up to the way that he stood with and against his own party sometimes, and I think that's the mark of a real leader, somebody who can stand up for the right thing, even when it's not politically popular. I am a registered Democrat running on the Democratic Party ticket, and labels are hard because labels imply a lot of things that I'm not, and they also don't share the whole picture. But the reason that I'm in this, the reason that I've always been a public servant in some way, whether it's in private nonprofits or in this role, is because I care about being a voice for people. I believe in the ideals and the goals of families to reach their fullest potential when given the right opportunities. And I want to be a voice for people. And so if I had to pick why I'm a Democrat, that would be it. But again, I think labels only share a small part of the story.